And we're live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Survivor Angelica at night. I'm your host, Parker, and we're back covering Survivor Angelica 2022. With me, as always, is Nathan. Nathan, how you doing?
I'm good. I just got done pushing carts in the dark of night, but I'm very happy to be discussing this instead of out in the cold with the crazy retail customers. So
So you're
glad to
saying
be
these
here.
you're saying these episodes were not as strenuous as that.
Yes, I would say so.
Okay, just making sure. We have two great guests joining us, back with us for the second time. Very happy to have him. He's not sick of us just yet. Ask him by the end of the night. Maybe he will be. Is Mark. Mark, how you doing?
Hey, everybody. I'm doing great. Great to be here.
And joining us, first time this season on the podcast. Very happy to have him. He is one of the final four, as we found out by the end of the night. It's Dan. Dan, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here. I can't wait to talk about it.
Absolutely. Nathan, I got to say, we have two very fun episodes to talk about this evening.
Yeah, I was actually talking to Parker just a little bit ago. This might be kind of a weird pick because these two episodes are pretty straightforward vote-wise. These are probably my favorites of the season, at least combo-wise. I felt like this was the point in which we started understanding the dynamics a little better as viewers. Whereas a lot of the other votes were fun, but I kind of had it was a lot of just asking people on the show what was going on, whereas these episodes I think are more self-contained.
I agree, and I think part of that is we're getting to the end now. There's not a lot of. It's fairly straightforward. Everyone's figuring out what they want to do and who they want to go to the end with, and I think the storytelling was very on point these two episodes. It almost felt like a continuing story through both of them in a way, so it was kind of cool to see. I think we did a good job pairing these together, but as always, we like to ask all of our guests who join us on the podcast, what is their background with Angelica? Dan, I'm curious, how did you find out about Survivor Angelica?
So I kind of found out about Survivor Angelica like kind of through you, actually. So originally I applied for Realfoot.
Right.
Then I ended up being an alternate, and I was still trying to find another LRG to get into. And then I remember watching this podcast with your when you were when they were first introducing it with Jason, and Jason was talking about how the next season was coming out. And then I went on the live reality game casting on Facebook, and then that's how I actually took the same video that I did for Realfoot and just sent it to them. And that
works.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
So is this your first live game, Dan?
Yeah, this I've played LRGs of my own that I did, but it's more like friends, and it's kind of like what I feel like Survivor Angelica might have been like maybe 10 years ago, where it's kind of more. It's not. It's competitive, but people do not know what this is a great cast where everybody knows what they were doing and they're super fans. That's not the case like in the games that I played in the past. So I do have experience.
So you just invite people to your house and have them play Survivor with you?
A friend's house, yeah. Like we would organize
awesome.
it. It was before live reality games was a thing, that I knew about anyway. The first one I did, it was in 2010, and it was a lot of my coworkers and stuff, and just people bringing people. And then it went dormant for a long time, and then we started up again in 2018, and we've been doing it since.
That seems like a recipe for a very easy game to play. I mean, I know I've had workplaces before where I wished I could vote some of these people off. But like you're playing these live games and everyone's so nice. Like I don't want to vote anyone off. They haven't done anything bad to me. Or I'm like, this lady, she calls in every other day. Let's get rid of her right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was awkward. That first season was a little awkward. The next day when some people were voted out, people were turned on and stuff like that.
I bet it was awkward. So we start off with episode 11 here. First, I do want to get to obviously episode 10. Big shift in the game. A big move was pulled off, and from both of your ends actually. But Dan, we'll start with you. Obviously, you and Tori wanted to make a big move. Sounds, makes sense. It's near the end of the game. You want to make sure you take out the big threats. But I do want to ask, were you prepared to break the hearts of millions when you broke up Dan and the Gangsters?
Yeah, I knew that was kind of the Yoko Ono breaking up the band, right? It just that we were gonna have to go at each other at some point, and me and Tori were definitely trying to set up so that we could vote him out around like 7. With that, we were trying to work with Andrew and oh my god, I'm so bad with names. Ashley was still, so we were trying to a little bit work Alyssa too in the beginning, but mainly we were trying to work those two, hoping that we would have a 4 at 7 and we'd be able to flip it. But of course Justin is Justin, and he was able to get in their heads and make that not happen.
And Mark, from your end, obviously also trying to break up Dan and the Gangsters. I thought it was interesting because you did go with the Dan and Tori split initially at that final 7 vote, but on the revote, you decided to vote off Justin, which I thought was interesting because last time we had the podcast, you talked about him being a very close ally of yours. So what made you decide that this was the right timing to vote out Justin?
Yeah, at the revote, I really thought Justin had no shot at that point of making it through, and it was more a respect vote than anything else. And I just gave him that on the way out. I wanted to be able to talk about him at the confessional at the voting booth. So
it makes sense. And like you said, you didn't think the votes were there to keep him anyway. Even if you could have thrown a vote, but like, what would that have done? So I completely get it. I was just curious from your perspective, if that was around the time you wanted to cut Justin or if you wanted to go even further with him.
Yeah, I mean, I had thought about trying to go further, but Alyssa had tipped me off that he had played before and won before. And since the merge, like that had started to creep in my mind more and more. And I think you see in these episodes, like I have pretty good relationships with everybody. And so I kind of knew no matter who went, I'd have other people I could work with, so I wasn't too concerned.
While we're early on in this podcast, I feel like it's an important thing to ask. Last week, Tori said that Dan came up with the name of Dan and the Gangsters for the Alliance. Dan, do you take ownership for this?
So I'll tell you how I remember it. Mark, you tell me it. You can jump in. The way I remember it is they came up, the 3 of them come up to me and they say, Dan, clearly you're the leader here. We want to form we want to form a group and we want you to lead it. And I'm like, that's gangster. And then they're like, Dan of the Gangsters. But seriously, it really was just me. I had an idea that I wanted to make up like silly names and it was going to be Dan and whatever. And you can see me in that moment that I'm kind of in the background, just kind of like giggling to myself, waiting to just like jump in and say it. And Dan of the Gangsters is just what came out.
Mark, is that how you remember it? Is that what happened?
It did just come out of his mouth. Maybe he had a dream the night before of us all getting together and coming up with that. Dan did not sleep well in Angelica.
Oh.
How'd you sleep,
from all
Mark?
your snoring?
Oh,
so yeah. Mark apparently slept well, is what we're getting.
I was the oldest one on the Anka tribe. I was the oldest one on the Anka tribe, so I needed my sleep.
Yeah. I was glad not to be the token old guy, so it was fun that I was put on the old tribe.
Well, Dan, I'm curious because obviously we do see a little bit of in the early on this episode. We don't touch on it too much. I just want to get your perspective coming back to camp, because obviously everyone just lied to you. You and Tori survived despite being the initial targets. What was it like going back to camp, trying to get back in everyone's good graces?
Yeah, I'm just I don't know exactly who voted for who. I know that what I thought was going to happen didn't happen, and I'm kind of just trying to get like information and like kind of get back into some group. That's kind of, there's that scene where I'm talking to Mark and Christina, and I'm talking up like Tori about like, are you guys sure you're not gonna like just go after them? I'm just kind of like trying to see where their heads at. But when I find out that they're willing to go with me and Tori, I'm ecstatic about it.
And Mark, how was damage control for you coming back from this vote?
Yeah, I was trying to remember how the votes all fell, and I voted for Tori, but at the voting booth, I said, I don't think that you're going to go. So I feel like I actually was duped at that vote too. I think people told me that they were voting Justin, and I didn't feel comfortable voting for Justin in that first vote. So I was throwing a vote in Tori's direction, but then the vote ended up 3-2-2. And I think I was kind of taken aback by that.
Oh, that's interesting. So I'm not sure if that came across in the episode. So you were in not the same as Dan and Tori, obviously, but you were kind of feeling like you were left out a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little fuzzy though, I have to say.
I remember you telling me. I do remember you telling me that, Mark, and I wanted to ask you because I was like, I don't know if that was just like made up or if that was like the truth. But yeah, that's the story that you were saying to me when it went down, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Yeah. And Dan was nervous at that revote. Like I remember Dan being panicked that he was gonna surprisingly go, and he was very thankful to stick around.
Yeah, I remember looking over at Mark and like you kind of gave me a nod, and I was like, all right, well, I think I'm gonna be okay. But yeah, it was like watching your like best friend like in the game blow up in front of you, then get like reincarnated, and then like then you're almost voted out. It was like me and Tori set up a Acme like Wile E. Coyote trap, and like we set it up, and then Justin went and like reset it up, and then it worked, but like a little screw went and like hit him in the neck or something. That's the way I
feel. Nathan, speaking of Tori, this is obviously, what do you even do in this situation? You were just voted out by the tribe. What do you think Tori could have done, if anything, in this episode?
I think he was doing it. I think being pretty straightforward with everyone. Going, hey, why are you voting me out, essentially. Being pretty blunt about it, too, which I appreciated. I liked his very kind of to the point thing with this, because I think a lot of the pretense and things like that go away once your name is written down officially. I think at this point, Tori was in a really tough spot because, I mean, we see it. He's good at throwing sandbags into buckets. He's good at puzzles. He's good at that, whatever that weird ball thing was this round.
Yeah.
It's just, you can't keep this guy to the end if you don't want to sit next to him.
Yeah, like I said, he was in a very tricky spot. He was seen as the biggest target. He didn't have immunity. I'm with you, though. I'm glad you brought it up. I liked the fact that he wasn't beating around the bush anymore. Not saying he was doing that before, but I feel like I've heard from people who have been voted off and come back in. They're like, I've already lost, essentially. Like, I've been voted off, So I'm like, there's no reason to mince words anymore. I'm just going to go full throttle. And I think that was the approach he took, and I appreciate it. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's what he was doing, and that's probably what I would have done in that situation. I think he handled it about as well as he could have.
Okay, I was curious. I don't know if y'all know this off the top of your heads. How many immunities has he won, like individually speaking? Because I feel like we're always talking about him as this challenge beast, and I consider him that too. But what's his record? Do we know?
I think he won one.
Yeah, he won that final 9. And the other part, I think, of the challenge beast part of it, and this is true for Dan and for me and Justin too, like, and we won 6 of the 7 tribal challenges. Like,
Right.
so that kind of put a target on all of us a little bit.
So the one that I won, the long arm contest, essentially, I remember Tori threw that to me. Because I remember we were talking about, he's like, I don't want to get a target on my back. Do you want to, like, I think I'm going to throw it to you. But again, it's a long arm. I don't know if he will want it. He was like, oh yeah, I'll throw this to you. But good for Tori, because that like really kind of showed trust with me and like made us more bonded. Just doing little things like that.
I think it's a combo of what Mark said and also what you're referencing, where I don't know if it's necessarily so much that he's winning a bunch of individual immunities as much as it is when he isn't winning, he gets second or third each time. Yeah. He's always in the running to be winning these challenges.
Right.
And I think that first challenge, like, just marked him. Like, I think he was just that guy after that challenge.
Like the first challenge of the season?
Yeah.
Or
like the first challenge of the season, with the slingshot, he catches the 2 of them. He pretty much won it for us. Not single-handedly, we all worked great together, but like he kind of really shined, right? Don't you agree, kind of, Mark?
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Nathan, we get to a pretty fun immunity challenge this episode. It's a multi-stage event, as Jason tells us. It's a fun one to watch. What do they have to do in this challenge?
So the first part of this challenge is they have to throw a beanbag into a bucket and go underneath, like do an army crawl, and then do a sundial puzzle. Am I right on all of that?
Yeah, the knots were in there too, right? Untying the knots.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
right.
yeah. The knots, I believe, after the bags. But I got to tell you, Nathan, this was a very creative puzzle, I must say. The sun, I've never seen that on CBS. Like, this is like show quality.
Yeah, not even. Actually, I disagree with you. It's not show quality because they put thought into it. I was thinking about it, outside of like hanging puzzles that they do where it's like hanging on a rope or something, we don't very often see very vertically based challenges where they were like having to stand up and like reach to do this puzzle. I really liked this challenge, in part because of the creativity, but more so because Jason got to release all his pent up ball jokes that he had. Okay, so little inside scoop here. I was originally planning on making a bracket of all the ball comments Jason said this episode alone. That did not end up happening, but it became ridiculous, partially because this puzzle seemed like impossible to do unless you're Jason's 8-year-old son.
Oh, you're talking about the pyramid ball puzzle?
Yeah, the target ball puzzle that Jason's son was apparently really good at. No one else in the world is.
Listen, we'll get to that in a sec, but this was a lot of fun to watch. I would have been horrible at it, but I definitely enjoyed it as a viewer. I'm curious, Dan and Mark, did you guys have any particular strategies when you were trying to approach this sundial puzzle?
It took me a while to figure it out. Like I think he said it, but like I didn't get that it was supposed to be like coming out like a sun. Like I don't know, like what. It was hard for me. I didn't have a good grasp of it.
And I love puzzles, and I thought that it was going to be easy for me, and I was really struggling. Like I did not do well. I thought that was going to be the best part of the challenge for me, and it ended up being the worst.
And then, so they split up into the 2 groups, as we saw. Tori wins for the first group, Ashley for the second. And as you alluded to, Nathan, we get to the puzzle only Jason's 8-year-old son could do. And this was also a very creative puzzle. I feel like, Nathan, not this exact puzzle, but I feel like we've seen similar ones on the show. like with like with the buoys, that they have to form the pyramid in. So it kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah, I think this was the one that a few years ago Evie had
That's
memorized before the game. Which, speaking of that, did either of you, Dan or Mark, did either of you practice puzzles before you came on, Angelica?
I did, but it certainly did not help. Like, I practiced like in the next episode that we didn't get to yet. Like I practiced just regular puzzles like that, but it did not go. Didn't do anything.
Parker, did you ever practice puzzles before any of the games you played?
Yeah, but like not like the 3D like physical kind. I just download a few apps, so mainly like on my phone, like slide puzzles and whatever, because I was like, I'm gonna be terrible at that. And then the one slide puzzle that happened when I played, I didn't do. Some other team members did, so I'm like, oh, okay. So no, I really didn't. I mainly just went to like practice running and like went to the gym and stuff like that. Well, what about you?
I had all these ambitions of, I'm gonna master slide puzzles before I went out, and then my brain came up with the brilliant argument of, so I did not end up practicing slide puzzles, and you know what? It didn't matter. It didn't matter.
You're more of a balance guy anyway. You can rock the balance beam. That's your role.
I'm more of a please don't put me in the challenge kind of guy.
That's true as well. But this was a lot of fun. I mean, I don't know how long it exactly took for Ashley and Tori to take a crack at this puzzle, but I had a lot of fun with it, watching it. And then Nathan, Ashley pulls out her second individual immunity in a row.
Yeah, Ashley challenged Beast. Much like the end game is sneaking up on us, Ashley's challenge wins are sneaking up on us as well. Just winning these back to back. Yeah,
we're gonna get to it, but I mean, next episode we may see something similar. So, but that was a fun challenge. I always appreciate. I as a fan like watching the ones that are like multiple steps. It's always a chance for a comeback, and also I like participating in those. Personally, that's just me though. So I liked following along with this challenge, but we do have a vote to get to.
Hey, Parker, before we move on, Dan or Mark, do either of you think you would have done well at that puzzle?
No, definitely not.
I do. I think I would do well at it. Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Nathan? Would you have done good?
Oh, that's one of those things where like expecting me to be able to do that puzzle is like expecting a dog to create a delicious rotisserie chicken dish. It's just like, you could put me there and I could like slam my hands against it for hours. It's just not gonna happen.
And
fair enough.
I'd like to say I would do well on it, but I also have to say, we were out there at that point for, I don't know, 40 hours and have barely eaten anything and we're tired. So that's always a wild card, right?
Well, we do get back. We have to strategize for this vote, and obviously results oriented. But I do want to ask. I think the main question I have for both of you is, how does Anka get back on the same page? Because this is wild. Because at the end of the tribal, the 4 Ankas all voted together. So I'd love to hear from each of your perspectives. Walk us through how you think that happened.
Well, I'll start. I want to make a mention to the guarantee that kind of went up in smoke at the last tribal. So I was excited for a half a second there that I was going to be safe, but that's gone. I think for me at this point in the game, I'm starting to realize that if Andrew makes it to the end, he's going to have the most amazing story of the underdog, and we're all going to lose to him. So he had been on my radar as a target since the merge. And I think at this point in the game, I'm like, okay, we got to get this guy out.
Yeah, same. But like for me, he was just becoming way too threatening. And I thought I had him lined up where he's going to be voting with me and he didn't. And I just, Mark, told me the story that he kind of got duped too. So I had trust with him. and it just I was surprised that we were able to a little bit all get back together, but I think it just made sense because of how much of a threat Andrew was becoming.
We got more of Kurt's sly editing this week, which
We
I
did.
always love. Kurt's great because he isn't like adding in sound effects to like let the audience know when he's making a joke. He'll just juxtapose scenes that are really hilariously cut together. Like I think it was with you, Mark, that Andrew's talking and he's like, I just really think we could work together. I think this could work out really well. Cut to a confessional with you of like, I want to vote out Andrew so bad. Then cut back to this conversation like, yeah, man, I think we could really have a good run at this.
Very good editing humor, I agree. But it's crazy because Mark and what you both are saying makes complete sense, and that's what I figured. But I'm glad we could talk about it. But it's interesting, Mark, how you're in a position where you could vote against Tori and Dan at the previous trial, but now you're back to working with them. Was it just? Do you think the trust was still there, or was it just common enemy at that point?
I think it was a little bit of both. But as Christina, Dan, and I think our rationale, and you saw us talking together, is we'd rather roll the dice with Tori going forward than Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's crazy, and I assume that nobody knew that Andrew had an idol. That was a secret kept to himself.
I think he might have told Ashley right before Tribal. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that, but it was frustrating because we were idol hunting a ton, right? Because we weren't going to Tribal, especially earlier on. I mean, we were in the woods a ton, looking everywhere, and to find out that it was by the cabin, I was like, I never thought it was going to be that close to where we were staying and that easy to find.
Yeah, I remember I feel like I looked around that area so many times. There's a scene a couple episodes back where I'm like, I have a stick and I'm looking around. I'm like, well, like I know there's an idol around here somewhere. And then I'm like, well, if I'm dicking around, I could, I can get back to my interview. But like, I remember the camera was always facing the other direction, and then for some reason it was facing towards the cabin. And I don't know if that's when it like went into play, but I remember saying like, there's something going on here, and I bet it's like over here.
And Dan, Andrew, and I were actually together in the woods. It was nighttime, and we were all looking together. And then all of a sudden, Andrew wasn't with us anymore, and Dan and I are still out there in the woods. We're like, where'd he go? And that's when he found it.
I'm curious because obviously you guys, I believe it was before the Justin vote, you guys had the 7 of you had your last night in the game, and then everything picked up the next day. Was that how was that night mainly filled with idol hunting, or did people try to get some sleep?
Well, there was idol hunting. That's actually when I found the guarantee.
Okay.
So we were out idol hunting, and then I'm like, I'm just gonna go a little bit further, and I kind of broke off from the group, and they were kind of heading back, and that's when I found it, and I went into the porta potty, and that's when I opened it. I was so nervous about anyone seeing me do this, and when no one was looking, I threw the parchment into the fire and hope no one caught it burning up. Like, I was so paranoid about people finding out about this guarantee. But yeah, that's when that all transpired. There was a fair amount of looking, wouldn't you say, Dan, for idols that night?
Oh yeah, that last night, I feel like I was one of the last people looking at, but then I eventually just gave up and hoped that nobody had found it. Or at some points, I remember thinking, like, are there idols in this game? Like, are we really that bad at finding these things?
Nathan, it's unfortunate because the vote makes complete sense to fall on Andrew here. Like, if you talk about what an underdog story that would be, but it's frustrating that that's just another nature of the beast of how if you lose a lot early on and you can still make the end, that might still not even be able to make the end because people harping back to what happened pre-merge.
Yeah, success breeds more success generally.
Yeah.
or not even necessarily success. Maybe comfort breeds comfort, you might say. Kind of what you're getting at, where the more trouble you have early on, the more likely it is you'll have trouble later on as well. It's kind of just a compounding effect.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was actually interested with both of you, Mark and Dan. You're playing this live game, and early on, you all like lost one challenge immunity wise. At a certain point, are you all getting kind of antsy to go to tribal again?
I kind of am. Like, I mean, I was more than happy to be winning all the challenges and be safe, but I also wanted to like get an idea of where people actually were. Like, it was very boring. Like, I'm used to like the one day one that I've done in the past where it's like super fast, and like this was like a slog because it was like just. I remember like talking to me and like, wow, it seems so slow, and be like, yeah, but like look over there, they're like running all over the place and it's like going super fast for them. But it was not the case on our side.
And for me, it was the opposite. When I played Angelica in 2019, there was a battle back that season as well. And our tribe was advantaged that season as well. The battle back person came into the other tribe, and we ended up merging at 5-5. So we were not advantaged at the merge. So I was thrilled to be up 7-3, like, because I didn't want a repeat of what happened the previous time.
Well, we do get to tribal council here, and votes fairly straightforward down the line. I did like, Dan, your voting confessional of quoting Star Wars. Are you a big Star Wars guy, Dan?
Yes, I am. The old school ones.
That was my next question.
Yeah. I kind of like the new ones. Yeah, I don't like the prequels too much.
Well, who does?
Yeah. That goes without saying nowadays, I feel like.
Nathan, you and I have talked about this before, right? Which is the best Star Wars?
Which is the best? The
Star
holiday
Wars.
Special.
Oh yeah. Oh,
yeah.
That's right.
Of course.
I love me some B. Arthur and some
and Wookiees.
Some Wookiee families. Yeah.
Yes. That never happened. Come on. George Lucas said himself it didn't happen. So we do get to the votes. Andrew does play as Otto, rightfully so. I think it was the last. I'm pretty sure it was the last time he could play it anyway. I think he said Final 6 last episode. So good use there. He saved himself, and we do lose Tori. And Nathan, I thought Tori was a lot of fun. He played really well. He was seen as this huge threat. He gave great confessionals. He was a great character.
Yeah, I actually texted Parker earlier on this week with this, because last week there was talk. Tori said him and Ray might somehow actually be cousins.
Yeah.
And if that is true, put these two men on Blood versus Water Survivor. I thought Tori was a lot of fun. He was a lot of fun on the podcast as well. And one thing I've really enjoyed about this season is you get a sense of people's personalities on the episodes, but once you talk to them, I feel like I get a better sense of who they are on the episodes as well. So I thought he was very fun, very funny, and obviously really, really good at random challenges, whether it be throwing bean bags or memory challenges or dodgeball, what have you.
Yeah, and slingshot. Yeah. Mark, Dan, obviously you guys spent a lot of time with Tori. I'm curious, what was your time out there with Tori like?
Tori was awesome. Like he was my number one for sure. And just like, it's so fun to like go through the game and have somebody that you can just like completely trust and work with. And I felt like I had that relationship with him. Like he was just like, the second I met him, and Mark too, like all three of us were just like, once we saw we were on the same team, I was just like, all right, I think I'm in a good spot. Like I'm going to roll with these two.
Yeah, from a game perspective, Tori was a great shield for me. I'm not going to lie, and But from a human perspective, like I was secretly rooting for Tori to win.
Yeah.
Like we're all fans of the game, and sometimes you fan out about someone else that you're even playing with, and that was how I felt about Tori. I was like, I want this guy to go all the way. If I think he'd be a great winner for this season. Like I was like, I can't tell him this, and I can't sabotage my own game for this. But that's what I was secretly rooting for.
Yeah, that's the hard part, and I think it's like next the beginning of next episode. I talk about like how Tori had to go. Like I was never actively gunning for him, but it was just constantly in my head. I'm like, what am I doing? Like I can't. It was like head versus heart. It's like I want to I'm working so well with him. I'd love to go to the end, but it's like I'm totally like forfeiting my game if I do. But I mean, he would have made it through that vote too if it wasn't an idle play. So,
Nathan,
I wanted to actually ask about this. Was this a split vote in case Andrew had an idol? What was going on here with the 3-3?
We didn't.
No, I think it was a 4-2.
It was 4-2, I think. Right?
Yeah, it was a 4-2.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Jason read the votes. It was 3. Andrew, then 2 Tori, and then 1. Okay, yeah, it was 4.
No, well, I'm glad you brought it up because I do take notes for this podcast just so I don't forget anything. I wrote down actually that it was 3-3 because Jason reads the 3 canceled Andrew votes, then he reads 2 Tori. So I'm like, oh, the third one is Tori, but then the last one is another Andrew. I'm like, oh. So I had to scribble that out. So I was like, he read them in a different way than what was expected. So I caught that too, Nathan. Nathan, I did think it was funny is we talked about it last podcast about how Justin and Tori had like this Cold War throughout the season, and they both kind of leave in the same way. Like Justin has the votes the round he leaves, and then he's out due to something out of his control. And then Tori this round has the votes, leaves out of something out of his control. So I think this is kind of like a case of their 2 sides of the same coin.
You live by the twist, you die by the twist. Exactly.
Absolutely.
I loved earlier. This isn't even really funny. It's just something I found fun of Tori going up to the camera, showing off the Phoenix idol or whatever.
Oh yeah,
that was good. I'm glad you brought that up. Dan, you actually brought something up just a second ago, head versus heart, and I skipped over it. There's a very early Christina confessional that I want to touch on that I forgot about but it was a great confessional. First of all, we get to hear about why is Christina playing the game. We get to hear her strategy for the remainder of the game, and I thought it was a very powerful confessional from her, especially given what was going on in her home life at the time. And Christina's been great the whole season, but I thought this was a really great episode for her as well. Nathan, she brought up something that I thought was interesting of talking about how she has to separate, head versus heart in this game. And I think that's something that if you haven't actually played one of these LRGs, you don't understand that you do actually get attached to these people. Like just a second ago, Mark and Dan, y'all were talking about how, deep down, you're kind of rooting for Tori, but you're like, you still want to win the game. So Nathan, how if someone hasn't played this game, how would you describe to them the head versus heart issue? Because if you haven't played, you don't understand how you do get attached to these people.
Oh my god, I am the worst person to coach anyone on this. I went in playing live games like, oh, I'm going to be like a sociopath. I'm going to cut everyone. I won't care. And then you get out there and you're like, I felt so bad because a lot of these people, especially people who are in this like LRG sphere, and who know these people in real life, these are your real life friends, and you know how much a game like this, they're using their vacation time, they're spending money they might not even have, and you appreciate how much this game means to them in that way. And there's a point in your head in which you go, what makes me more worthy to stay in this game from a moral point of view than them? The blunt truth is, in my opinion, and people can feel free to disagree with me on this, sometimes I don't think it's worth it. Like if you're my real life close friend, I don't want to ruin a real life friendship for a weekend Survivor game, Now, from a gameplay point of view, that's bad, but it is something that definitely goes into your calculations here.
No, and I'm glad you brought it up that way. It's different per person. That's what makes this game so interesting, is everyone has a different take on it. But I'm curious to hear from Dan and Mark y'all's perspectives on this. How challenging was it for each of you when you were in the game, separating your head from your heart when it came to the gameplay?
Like, I try. Yeah, I'm like you, Nate. It's like you go in and like you want to be like a game bot and like and just like win, 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 kill. But like you said, there's part of you that like you actually like these people. And I've been in situations where I've like cut really good friends that I've been close to, and I've gotten to the end and lost anyway. So it's like coming to the end. Like if Tori was still there, I don't know what my decision would be. Like part of me is like, because if you cut the person and then you go and like you still lose, like then it's really awful. Then it's like, oh well, like now I screwed him over and I didn't even get the prize.
Yeah, in my 2019 game, I actually played with two real friends prior to Survivor, and that was my first game. They were on the other tribe, and one of them went out before the merge, so I didn't really get to play with him. And the other woman, I went out before she did, and so it didn't come down to me voting out someone that I knew well. But I do still carry with me the first person we cut from our tribe that season, because I kind of orchestrated the vote, and I still feel bad about it. It was her first time playing, my first time playing. Right. So even someone that I didn't even know, I still carry some guilt with that. But this game, I came in, the second time around, not knowing anyone but Alyssa. And like, I just kind of knew Alyssa from watching her the previous season. So I didn't know her super well. But I kind of came in saying, I got to put my game first. And I just kind of carried that with me the whole time. And that's kind of my mental framework. And because I didn't know any of these people from these other LRGs, it was a little bit easier, I think.
Even within just voting out your friends, I do think there's a lot of nuance to that. First of all, it's how you go about it. And also, I think timing is a big thing. There's a big difference between cutting someone at Final Four, like, hey man, you're too big of a threat, versus blindsiding them as the first boot for no reason. And I think that's where a lot of friendships in these games die, is people just betraying them for the kicks, basically.
Yeah. I think you're right about that. Timing is a big part of it. And like you said, there's sometimes it's different if you actually know the person before the game, if you just met them during the game, it's different. Everybody handles it differently. There's no one all be all for how to handle this type of thing. It's just always, I just like to talk about, because it does affect everyone differently. And it's just cool to get different perspectives on it. So I'm glad Christina talked about that in her confessional, because you could just tell by what she was saying, it was hitting her hard, but she was putting her game first. Kind of like you were, Mark. So and she was ready to continue going. So I thought that was a good one to shout out.
I'm glad you brought that up, Parker, because up to this point in the season, another reason why I'm liking these episodes the most of the season is I feel like this was the first point where I really felt like I had everyone's headspace to a certain extent.
Right.
And I feel like up to this point, Christina was one of those people who I just had a harder time understanding what she was thinking throughout the game, and I thought that confessional was really good for that purpose.
Absolutely. I think everybody's story is pretty clear for here on out. It was very good to hear from Christina there. It was good to hear from everybody. Nathan, was there anything else in episode 11 that we missed that you want to talk about?
Nothing in particular now.
Okay. Dan and Mark, did we miss anything glaring?
I just wanted to add about Christina's confessional. It was very emotional, and it was very telling of what had just happened over the last few votes. And even for me, that was aligned pretty closely with Christina, I didn't necessarily know all of the detail of that confessional until watching it. She was private at times, and I saw her go through some struggles after the merge. but it was really nice to hear her talk it out through that confessional.
Absolutely. Well, we do go on to, it's a bit of a shorter episode, but it's still a fun one. Episode 12 here, and we start with the confession of Andrew, and I think it must have played in episode 11 during the trial, but I missed it. Andrew says that when he played his idol, the jury said Team Andrew. Was that correct?
They were like celebrating, but I don't think they showed it in the episode. But like, I remember people going kind of like nuts in the jury, right?
Okay.
You remember, Mark? Yeah.
I don't recall, but did you catch in the episode Tori saying, "Oh shoot"?
I didn't catch that. That's fine.
No.
Before his
yeah,
votes
like
were
when he
read.
sees what's happening,
Yeah, when he sees what's unfolding.
Dang it! I didn't rewatch. That's funny. No, I missed the because Andrew talks about. He says, "Okay, I couldn't tell if he was just saying they said Team Andrew. Okay, it sounds like they weren't verbally saying that, but like you said, Dan, it sounds like just their body language and their faces lit up. You could tell they were excited.
yeah.
That was their guy, which I'm sure made y'all's decision to vote him out even more obvious at that point. Not that it was already obvious, but didn't help his case, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Let's see. And then we do get a quick confessional from you, Dan, as well. I'm curious, was there like a solidified like moment between the three of y'all, Dan, Mark, Christina, where you guys just solidified this is the final three, or was it just kind of like, hey, this is what we're doing?
I think we talk about it a little that last episode, right? Like, I don't know if I know that she approached me and was like saying, "I think that you're the only one I can beat, and I want to go to the end with you." And I remember, me and you were pretty much like, I was good with trying to go to the end with you, and then I think like once Tori is gone, it just kind of made sense that we formed a three.
Yeah, Tori's departure really solidified the three. I mean, here we are going up against Ashley, the challenge beast, and Andrew, who we just failed to vote out and could win an immunity at any time. So the three of us are like, we're in this together. Let's stay strong. So,
Nathan, we do get, after we saw it last season, we get the Brett special of the ropes course, but this time there was a puzzle. Talk to us about this one, Nathan, for the immunity challenge.
I barely even understood the challenge before Ashley won the challenge. This was the complete polar opposite of the previous challenge, where it was comical because like it was taking forever. This one, it was like, all right, Survivor's ready. Ashley wins. Goodbye. I loved that we did these episodes as a double feature, because this is also the double feature of Jason's son being really good at this challenge.
Yeah, I was gonna say to both of you, because both of you struggled in different aspects. Dan, what was happening on that puzzle, man?
Yeah, by the time I got him out of the box, it seemed it was over. But it was so I was watching it with my girlfriend, and she's like asking me questions about the carabiner and can you do this and that, and I'm just like laughing. I'm like, I'll tell you in a couple minutes, because I never got to it. I don't know how it works.
And Mark, you actually get out to a pretty early lead. You solved the puzzle relatively quickly. Like you said, you were good at puzzles, but just the ropes course caught you up. What was going on there?
Yeah, I was trying to be methodical and try, from left to right or right to left, all the different possibilities. And I had time to pretty much try all of them with that lead that I had. But man, there was one potential turn in somewhere in the middle that I missed. And that was my downfall. It was really confusing out there. Like, what is the finish line? Like, I didn't know that there was the word finish, like, it taped to a tree somewhere in small letters, like that was the finish. So I'm like looking around, like, what is the finish line? At one point, I don't think it made the footage, but I was like, Kurt, is this the finish? And he's like, no. I'm like, oh crap.
So I was curious about that. So they didn't tell y'all what to be looking for the end?
They didn't specify exactly what it was. I mean, obviously, if you found the word finish, you'd know you're there. But
right.
I was panicked out there. I was excited. I was like, gosh, this might be my first immunity win. I'd never had one in my previous game or this game. So I was like super stoked to have that huge lead. But it all got squandered by Ashley.
My first reaction upon seeing this challenge, like at least the carabiner part, is I feel like this must be a nightmare of a challenge to spot for if you're production. I feel like this is a very easy challenge to cheat on. Yeah, I think this and the blindfold challenges are the ones where I think there could be some shenanigans from the players if you're on productions and concerned.
It would be hard to spot. I agree.
Yeah, I agree with you. And production was kind of split because there were still people on the puzzle, and I did definitely feel like, okay, this is kind of honor system a little bit here with this carabiner and these ropes, and I was trying to be mindful of that as I was going through it.
Nathan, how would you do in this challenge?
Well, I'm a huge brony, as you all know. So wasn't that a My Little Pony puzzle that we okay?
The modern version of My Little Pony, not the 80s
modern
version that
My
I grew
Little
up
Pony.
with. That Dan and I grew up with.
I love it. Was the perfect combo of like Jason talking about like, oh, I gave this to my 8-year-old son, and then you see because you don't see the puzzle that close up early on, and you just get, oh, my son did this. Cut to it, and it's like My Little Pony puzzle. Is just such a great juxtaposition. Parker asked this because he knows I would also be flailing around with the My Little Pony puzzle.
That's not what I asked.
This is a Parker challenge, though. This is like a random skill set a challenge that I feel Parker would win.
Listen, you compared me to Brett last season. This is why I called it the Brett special. Okay, like this, I don't know. I think I'd be all right at this kind of stuff. I mean, when I was, I'm an Eagle Scout for those who don't know, and when like we would do courses like this at Boy Scout camp in the summer, so like I have a little bit of like knowledge of kind of what to do with the carabiners and the rope maze and stuff. But again, that was years ago, so I don't know if I could have done it. I probably couldn't even gotten past the puzzle. So like it would have been null and void. And considering how fast Mark and Ashley did it, I would have been stuck back there. So I don't know, but I would like to think I would have had a shot at this one.
I'm kind of surprised we don't get. I guess maybe I answer my own question with this. With it's difficult to spot, but I'm kind of surprised the CBS version doesn't do rope mazes as much because I feel like it's a cool visual and it's not an utter nightmare to set up like a wooden maze is.
I feel like they did this in the old school. Like I remember Colby winning this, I think, in the Outback. Like I just feel like they haven't done it in a long time. Well, Nathan, it's not stand there and hold this. Why would they do it on CBS?
Oh, so how silly of me. That's a good point.
I did think it was funny that you mentioned it was My Little Pony because I didn't even actually the first time I even realized that's what it was because I couldn't tell based on the visual was I think Dan you said it at the end of the challenge. It was like, oh, it's My Little Pony. I didn't even notice it until you said it. I was like, what it was, and then I went back and watched and I was like, oh, it was.
I definitely didn't get it from my puzzle. I must have looked at somebody else's.
Well, we do get, as we alluded to, this is actually third individual immunity in a row. Nathan, like, this is so. If I was Ashley, this is a wild feeling because her team didn't win anything early on, and now at the end of this game, when it's most important to be winning, she's just winning all these immunities by herself. Nathan, this is quite the juxtaposition.
Yeah, that you look at the intro of the episodes and there's a shot of Ashley wearing the immunity necklace. And if you were an ignorant first-time viewer, you might assume like, oh, that gives away the outcome of like which episode this is. But no, it really doesn't. It's just any given post-merge episode of the season.
be multiple.
I'd be interested, Mark, on your season. Did anyone win 3 immunities? Because I know last year Jay won 3 immunities. I wonder what the Angelica record is, because I feel like this has to be up there.
Yeah, I don't recall that happening in my first season, though. And it's even more impressive because at the final 8, we didn't even have an immunity challenge. So
yeah, that's a good
true.
point.
That's true. I'm curious. We'll have to ask Jason about that, Nathan. I'm curious as well, because that's the real foot record, and I can't speak for other live games, but 3 in a row is very impressive. So good on Ashley here. The vote is fairly straightforward. There is stuff to talk about, but I am curious from Dan and Mark, y'all's perspectives. Do you think Andrew was always the primary target here, or had Ashley been eligibly voted for, was there a chance she could have gone here?
I think I'm pretty sure we would be going after Andrew. She had the 2 wins, but like it's hard to say. But for me, I think that we probably would have been gunning for Andrew still. What do you think, Mark?
I agree. Ashley was playing a very subtle social game. It was a good and effective social game, but Andrew was playing a very assertive, borderline aggressive social game, which was also good. But I think we were all, realizing, he's talking to us all hardcore, like every round, trying to be influential, and we couldn't ignore that.
Got it. So it sounds like the only way it probably would have been Ashley is if Andrew was immune. Otherwise, if anybody else wins, it would have been Andrew.
I think so, yeah.
Nathan, this pre-tribal scramble is interesting because I feel like it's the culmination of everything Andrew has done well up to this point. But unfortunately, his number's up, and we get a lot of confessionals of Dan and Mark. You both are seeing through it, not in a bad way. Just you both, you have his number punched. I feel like it was an interesting juxtaposition, Nathan. Here, up to this point, it's worked well for Andrew, but it's just not working anymore.
This gave me vibes of like when you're watching the double episode in Cambodia, where the entire 2 hours is just everyone trying to backstab Stephen Fishback. I felt like it was kind of similar, this double feature of just everyone, Andrew trying desperately to get someone to vote with him, and then it cut to a conversation where, we're going to vote out Andrew so fast. Andrew, one thing I noticed about him, we asked Jason last week who was really good at tribal council answers, and he threw out Andrew's name. And upon watching this, kind of what Mark was getting out of, like, borderline aggressive, but maybe not aggressive isn't the right word. Andrew was very forward with his tribal council answers, and he is able to mix in answers that are actually substantive without just being ridiculous about it. In the previous tribal, I'm pretty sure he was talking about how everyone has the capability of winning a challenge, but not everyone will, which I actually thought was a pretty good point, because there wasn't anyone left in the game at that point who's just a total 0 in challenges.
Right. He was very. I agree. He was very forward in tribal councils. I think that's a good way to put it. And it's funny because I don't think this was intentional, but I did think there was a funny editing moment. Intentional on your end, Mark. I think there's a very funny editing moment when we're at tribal council this episode, and Andrew is answering the first question. He's talking about, everybody's got to be open to ideas and pass to the end. And it just hard zooms in on you, Mark. And you have a face where you're like, I've heard this 30 times over by now. I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm like, Andrew, you said this so many times. Which I thought that was, I don't think you were intending for that to be the case, Mark, but I thought that was a very funny editing cut. And then it cuts to Christina, who is just listening to Andrew speak. So I thought that there was a lot of funny editing cuts in this episode, Nathan, for that reason. But sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I feel like Andrew was the narrator of the season. I mean, he's been through it all throughout pretty consistently the whole season. He's been a great storyteller. I feel like he could read people really well. And part of his conversations, he liked getting people one-on-one. That was his preference, right? And he really would pull on your heartstrings and really try to get to the core of you and what could motivate you to go with him for whatever role. He was very effective. He was just a great player all around. So
I was going to ask, because we don't get the sense before Tribal what name Andrew's going, as viewers, what name he's going to write down for sure. He and Ashley end up voting for Christina. Dan and Mark, did he end up telling either of y'all that was what he was going to do, or was that left open-ended?
I don't think he told me.
I think it came up in one of the scenes in the episode that was disclosed to me, or I said, Ashley said she's voting for Christina. So I think I had a clue that that's the way it was going. And I thought Kurt did a great job editing this episode because of the back and forth and then not showing who my vote was at the voting booth. Kind of built a little bit of suspense. Like, did Andrew convince me to go with them?
I did. There was another that was good. I'm glad you brought that up, Mark. There was another funny moment pre-Tribal of Kurt editing the back and forth of, we get the end of, Mark, your conversation with Andrew, and you're like, all right, let me go talk to Dan. And Andrew's like, okay, great, let me know. And then hard cut to you and Dan. So that's not happening.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, that was funny.
So that there's just, again, Nathan, you brought up, that's just part of the humor that Kurt has, where he's not adding any like sound effects or anything crazy. It's just these juxtapositions between these scenes. And he talked about it when we had him on with Ray. That's kind of how he likes to edit them, and I think he does a great job at it. But
that was actually something, I'm not just saying this because these two guys are on the show right now, but when that conversation was happening on the episode, I was seriously thinking, just more of these two. This is funny. I loved how just like blunt and straightforward this conversation is. Like Solo Preaching's like, yeah, I understand.
Yeah. Yeah, Andrew was good. I thought that it was funny watching that. I was just like, you could see, I was like, kind of like butthurt. I was like, who does Andrew think he is flipping on me like that? Like, how dare he? Like, I was just like done with him. But yeah, he was just too good.
It was, you see, he's trying to pull out all these reasons. Like you said, Mark, he pulls on your heartstrings. He gives logical arguments. It just his number's been punched. It's hard at this point. And I think he gave it a valiant effort, at least from what we saw. Sometimes players, when they know their number's up, they kind of mentally check out a little bit. And I don't get the sense that Andrew was doing that. He was fighting to the very end. So that's always nice to see. And I don't think anybody else did that necessarily, but I definitely got the idea from Andrew that he was fighting until the bitter end to try to make something happen. And Nathan, it was crazy. I mean, he almost Denise stapled this thing. I mean, he almost went to every tribal and made the end. Like, what a wild story for Andrew this season.
I was actually thinking earlier on today that if let's say we all decided to pen a fake Survivor season and make it all fictional characters, if we wrote Andrew as a character, everyone reading it would be like, no, this isn't realistic. No one would talk in this like kind of badass speech like ways at tribal council. But no, this is like a real guy. I loved his speaking at tribal council, his pitches to people. It was all a lot of fun.
Yeah, he was great this season. He does end up getting voted out here 3-2. Ashley votes with him, but she knows it's not going to matter. So, respect to loyalty there, but we do lose Andrew. Dan and Mark, you guys didn't get to spend that much time with Andrew, just post-merge, but I'm curious, what was y'all's experience out there with Andrew like?
You want to go first, Mark?
Sure. Yeah. I mentioned this when I was on a couple episodes ago. He was the only person that Dan and I didn't know at the merge. So I won't speak for Dan, but I knew I had to do extra work to connect with him and have a relationship with him. And I feel like I did that. Andrew talked a lot about me being wishy-washy or genuine and kind of reading me at different points in the game. And I think that's spot on. I was trying to be genuine with him when I could, but other times, I knew that my alliances were elsewhere, and he picked up on it, really well. But he played with his heart. How many tribal councils did he go to? 12? Like, it's crazy. Pretty much the definition of a survivor up until this point in the game. And I would love to see him play again. I would not want to play against him again. I mean, he's a fierce competitor, and he just as well as like any of us, but I was really worried about him winning out in immunity challenges, and he definitely had the potential to do so, but Ashley just got in the way.
Yeah, I really liked Andrew for like when he first came, like because we only first met him at the merge, and I think we were like working pretty, like me, Mark, and Tori were really kind of trying to work him, but like we really like I really liked him too, and I was just like I was really falling for that, like those pitches that he did, and it wasn't until like we all kind of started checking notes and like it took a little while before we were like, oh wait, like I see what he's doing here. But yeah, like, he was awesome. He was a great player. I'd love to play with him again.
Also, one other important thing is because the key twist ended last episode as Andrew walks out. Can I do anything with these 5 keys? I didn't know he had 5 keys. That is insane. Yeah. Like I don't know if anybody else knew he had that many, but that was wild. I lost track at that point.
Yeah. I remember thinking, like, well, that's all the more reason to, like, if people are giving you all these keys.
Yeah, my face was shocked, and I was oblivious to the multiple, that you could even have multiple keys until who was the first person to try 2 keys? Was it Sarah or Tori? I don't know, but like I was completely oblivious that keys were being gifted to people.
I think Tori got gifted 1 or 2 pretty early, so I had an idea relatively early, like pre-merge, I think.
I know production will never admit this, but I have a bit of a conspiracy theory with the key twist. I think they had some keys lying around, and someone came up with the pun "guarantee," and they based the entire season off of that pun for a twist. And if so, I respect it, because it brings a stupid smile on my face every time we bring up the guarantee. I don't know. I like the guarantee.
Listen, Jason, Kurt, anybody else who's watching, you don't have to confirm or deny anything in these comments, but DM us anytime. So you don't have to say it publicly. But let's see. So there we go. I mean, we're at our final 4 now. Before we get to predictions, I do have a question, and for Mark and Dan, both of you, I'm very curious to hear what you guys have to say about this, and of course, try to avoid spoilers if at all possible for the finale. Going into the game, I'm sure everybody has some expectations about, oh, I'm going to do this, or like this could happen to me, or I'm going to play this way. I'm curious, did either of you guys play the game that you guys thought you would play before the season started, or was it completely different than how you expected it to be?
For me, I said this before, I was cast like 10 minutes before the game started. Right. So I didn't have a lot of time to think about it, but I was worried about people seeing my previous season and being an early target. And so my goal was to avoid being the first out. That was my goal. And I was like, well, if it happens, I can check that off the Survivor bucket list. First out, like at least it'll be something. So, but I really did, have that mentality of anyone but me. And it's gotten me this far. So it was working for me. I didn't want to be perceived as a leader. I wanted to find people to hide behind. And I think I achieved that too up until this point in the game. And just try to play the best social game I could.
Yeah, that I was really focusing on my social game too. The big thing, like the games that I've played before, the thing is like everybody knows everybody, and like I am like a huge threat in that world. And it was so cool. Like, I love the fact that nobody knew anything about me, and I really wanted to like focus on the social part and get like bigger threats in front of, like, I didn't have it all planned, but once I looked at the board and saw like the situation I was in, I was like, oh, okay, like I got these threats to hide behind. I'm in a solid 3. I thought like right where, like, I thought that I was going to do pretty good based on like the hand I got dealt. And I was really just like focusing on like not being a threat. Like, I was in the beginning when we were winning, when they would have people sit out of challenges, I totally would want to play, but I was like, well, let me just like not play at all and like keep feeding into this like I'm like a weak like player thing. So it kind of, like, pretty early on in the game, I figured out that I was going to be focusing on controlling my threat level and making sure big threats are ahead of me.
Like I said, a bit more of a straightforward episode. Dan, Mark, was there anything we didn't cover from episode 12 that you guys want to talk about? Well, Nathan, we have here our final 4. We are less than a week away from the finale. I was going to say a week. We're less than a week away. What are our predictions?
So last year it was a final 2, correct?
Yeah.
I think it was a final 2. I'm gonna just assume that it's a final 2 this year as well. I'm gonna predict Ashley's gone at 4, as long as there isn't another rope maze. And I think I'm gonna bet on a Christina win at this point. I feel like she's heating up. I feel like we're getting more of the Christina story. What are you thinking, Parker?
Well, it's interesting because I can't tell if it is a final 2 or 3 because there's they start the jury at 10, which they didn't do last time. So if it's a final 2, that'd be 8 jury members. So I'm curious. It could be a final 3, could be 2. I'm not too sure, unless my math's wrong. No, but I don't think it is. So I do think, though, I think you hit on the head. I think Ashley is gone. Unfortunately, she could absolutely win. I mean, she's done it the last few times, win the challenge. But I mean, everybody has their guns pointed at her, so this could be the end of the line. And you know, I think you have a good read. I think this could be Christina's. I think she has a good shot at this as well. But I don't know. I mean, like I said, so much can change in Tribal Council. At Final Tribal, people can say things. We don't truly know where the jurors' heads are at. I thought that I knew what would happen in Survivor 43, and even while the final votes are being read, I thought that it was going to be a different winner. So what do I know? So I'm very curious to see what's going to happen. But I think you got it right there.
Yeah, I was right there with you. I thought we were going to get a unanimous Al Gabler win, but instead we got a slightly not unanimous Al Gabler win, and I was utterly floored.
That's not what you thought would happen. I wasn't predicting that, certainly. But yeah, it's been a really fun season. I mean, I'm sad that it's coming to an end. It's been a lot of fun, just like last season was. I think the cast really brought it this season. I think the editing has been a lot of fun. Like you said, Nathan, these last few episodes have just been getting better and better, and I'm excited. I think we're due for an exciting finish. So I can't wait to see how this all ends up. What do you think?
I feel like this season and last season have a lot of similarities, just structure-wise. You have one tribe that just loses all the challenges, and Alyssa happens to be on that tribe. Another minor similarity there. And you have just a big group that ends up kind of betraying each other very early on in the merge. And then you get into a very competitive end game with a lot of people who are pretty good at challenges. So I think in both cases, it's led to a pretty interesting end game.
Absolutely. I also see similarities to last season. Last season was great. This season has been awesome. I'm very excited to see where it ends. But I think that's all I have for tonight. Dan, Mark, want to thank you guys both for joining us tonight, covering these episodes. It was a lot of fun. Join us soon as for our finale recap. The season's coming to an end. Should be an exciting one. So yeah, check back in with Live Reality Games soon. Make sure to follow the other podcasts on the network. And until then, we'll see you guys later.
Thanks for having us.